Welcome to another Durham Lane webinar. And today I'm really excited about this topic, very close to my heart. Today we're going to talk about the three biggest mistakes companies make when hiring their first GTM engineer. Definitely a buzz term in our world, I believe, at the moment. I've got a couple of fab guests to join me on this one. Before I introduce them and we get going, I just thought I'd outline what we believe those three biggest mistakes are, so you've got them in your mind as we go through the conversation. So mistake number one, hiring a GTM engineer before understanding your sales challenge or your sales challenges. Mistake number two, confusing strategy with execution. Mistake number three, getting ownership, accountability, and incentives wrong. So those are the three areas we're going to cover. I mentioned my esteemed guests, so just introduce them to you today. We've got James and Abbas. James Donaldson from Stakki. How about you go first? Quick intro, if you may.
Yeah, appreciate it, Richard. Good to be here. And like you say, it's a topic close to our hearts. Yeah, what we do at Stakki, we help companies outline their tech and their processes to better support their sales teams.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Looking forward to your input on this one, James. And Abbas Somji from the Playbook. Abbas, quick intro to yourself.
Hey Richard, thanks for having us on. And yeah, so I scaled an agency called the Playbook Agency, which is a GTM engineering business. We were the second ever clay agency to exit, and currently I'm still running the agency, but I'm also Chief Revenue Officer of InboxKit and SendKit, which are new tools in the go-to-market stack that help everything to do with cold email infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Abbas, James, we've got a couple of different sides of the story, and then there's myself. I'll weigh in from the SDR point of view, perhaps the doing the work piece. And James, I know you have a lot of experience and background there as well. I guess our purpose on today's webinar is to try and bring together three perspectives. We've got the sales execution and SDR performance, as I mentioned, outsource SDR and pipeline generation. So how do we go out and use these technologies to help us better, and GTM engineering, tooling and infrastructure. So if we can wrap all those together, and as we go through the conversation, guys, I think there's an opportunity for us to try and look at this from multiple angles and think about how can we provide ideas and suggestions for our listeners to go away and put some really practical things in place that we fully learned through through experience, usually both with ourselves and perhaps with our customers. So let's move into the topic. Mistake number one, hiring a GTM engineer before understanding your sales challenge or challenges. Yeah, Abbas, you've just sold a GTM business, so you've probably come across this quite a lot. So can I start with you and get your view on that? What are the pitfalls there?
Yeah, I mean, GTM engineering is such a new term. It was coined by Clay and is a bit of a marketing term, but it's really the gap between, RevOps and sales, and kind of that bridge between what is useful for sales and how to put these new systems together in a way that hasn't been done before with the advent of AI, automation, all these other things. And one of the things that I see again and again is teams thinking that because they've heard the term GTM engineer that they need one immediately, which is one. And two is jumping the gun in terms of sometimes trying to bring in someone who's on their team and kind of, getting like a mid-level SDR to become their GTM engineer. It's a
Right.
totally different skill set. And then also trying to decipher where do you even hire one, right? Like how do you even start that process? All of these things are so brand new. And one of the things that is fundamental for us whenever we take on a client at Playbook Agency is that they understand their sales strategy first and foremost, whether that's who is your ICP, where is your total addressable market, how do you tier those leads, and which leads do you want your reps going after, and which do you want in more automated cadences, right? And until you figure out those things and you've gone and done the whiteboarding, it's really difficult to actually know what you're getting from a GTM engineer, other than, sometimes I end up on a sales call and they're like, hey, we just need automated everything. And it's like, well, what do you need? Because we can do a lot, right? And so that's where things fall down from the jump.
And you from your pre-sales activity are really vested in making sure someone understands their world, I guess. So I'd be really interested to know what percent of people that come and ask you to help them are in that nirvana place of sort of knowing all of that, or do you end up doing a lot of work in the sort of before the right engagement point, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think everyone across any industry has this where you're all surprised by how far behind some businesses are. So when I was selling SaaS products, I was always surprised at how many people are still using Excel sheets. And similar thing is happening here where I'm always surprised at how few companies have taken a week or 2 weeks, a month to get these resources together and get the entire team singing off the same hymn sheet. So quite a lot of the time we have to have a very robust onboarding process which categorizes everything in our frameworks, because the challenge, and I'm sure all of us on this call recognize this, is we're not working for one business, one product, we're working for multiple at the same time. And so you have to really have some robust frameworks that work for almost every company and kind of guide them through that process as well. So if they're kind of at that 50% mark, we kind of have to handhold them through. But it's really important, and I usually know within the first 2 weeks how much effort has been put on their side, whether the engagement is going to be successful or not.
Oh, right, okay, so that's interesting. So there's like a sort of the 2 week test, the 2 week Abbas test. I like that.
Yeah.
James, what about from your side then? I presume similar, but what can you add to that commentary?
Yeah, I think, being from more like the SDR and sort of like specifically on the outbound side, I think there's this like tech bloat and tech sprawl. I think that's happened within most organizations over the last 5 or 6 years. And we have people think like outbound has gotten harder, or it definitely feels a lot harder. But really, what they've done, and they don't necessarily often realize, is that by adding new tools which are meant to be smart and help the team, they're actually just disjointed and fractured like that team's focus. You're not even thinking about the processes just yet, but actually like the focus of what actually your rep is trying to do every day. When they have 3 or 5 different Chrome extensions, it starts to break down that. And that's the real challenge, which people need to see and try and understand. And if you can identify these are all the areas that are distracting my reps, then I think that's where you start to then get in a good position to say, okay, actually a go-to-market engineer can solve this part of the process, this part of the process, this part of the process. And I think like to some of the conversations I think Abbas has, and I know I have, is people come and they haven't worked that piece out yet. They just know there's loads of challenges, and Clay's this really smart thing. Can that build loads of pipeline for us?
Yeah.
And there's this huge like disconnect of like understanding challenges.
Well,
and I think that's how you simplify it.
Is it the classic software silver bullet scenario?
Yeah.
Right, so
Shiny tools.
you're doing it, and this is a huge challenge across pretty much every business, isn't it? You're doing your thing. Someone at board level goes, we need more. So rather than actually taking a step back and thinking, well, what is our North Star? We just buy a new tool because, as you said, Abbas, it's sort of this term it's a marketing term, but it's so clever because it's created a category that now everybody believes is something we can't live without. So everyone's jumping in without doing the work at the front end. One interesting bit, we might get into this later, but just while it's on my mind, I'll ask it now. In your experiences, do you find that the sales teams are really open to working with the GTM engineer, or are they sometimes you're basically asking them to do things differently and therefore there's some resistance to it?
I think if you get the go-to-market engineer set up correctly, every salesperson loves it. Got someone else like scoring my TAM, feeding me lists, and my capacity for just pure cold calling. See, I'm cold call background. We all know I have that bias, but if someone had to take care of all the fiddly stuff, I didn't get into sales to learn how to connect things and how to fiddle with tech. I got into sales because I want to like speak to people, solve their problem, and probably make money from it
as efficiently as I possibly can be, as
exactly
successfully as I can be. Yeah.
And so I think most salespeople are open to it, but probably to the point of like that they're just like, can you just take all this off my plate? Great. And then they're kind of making that someone else's problem.
Yeah, and Abbas, do you have that experience then? Is that what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean the best GTM engineering. So the best GTM engineers are invisible. Like you shouldn't be in your SDR shouldn't be in clay, AE shouldn't be in clay, even the CRO shouldn't be in clay, right? Like no one should be touching clay apart from the GTM engineer, and they should be executing against the goal of the business. Now, do you need GTM engineering? If you have a large TAM, absolutely, because you need to be mapping and scoring. But this isn't the first time salespeople have faced this problem or sales teams have faced this problem. It just had a different way of solving it a few years ago. So a few years ago, you could buy lists from companies that would make you custom data lists, right? They would do the research for you. You have all these demand gen companies that will call people up and get first party intent, right? So you've always been able to solve this problem, and this problem has forever existed. This is just a new way of solving the problem, right? Which is, hey, my reps are spending 60% of their day not selling. They are doing follow-ups. They're trying to put people in sequences. The sequences don't work anymore, and everyone kind of knows it, but no one wants to say it. Like none of these tools work anymore the way they used to 5 years ago, and that's why you're seeing the CEOs of all these companies step down at the moment, right? So everything is shifting into this new gen of tooling. There's a bit of a rift now where everyone's used to going into a senior role and buying the same tech stack every time, and this is the first time people are hopping into a senior role now and being like, yeah, I need to start looking at my options now, the grocery list has
Yeah.
changed. Just to summarize, you do need it if you have a large TAM. You need to be making sure that when you sit down with your reps, you're mapping out, okay, well, let's watch my reps for a whole day, for a couple of days, and see, okay, every step that they're taking, and see what can be automated and what needs to remain human, because let's not automate the cold calling here, right? Like that is best done in the in-person meetings and the face-to-faces that we all have. But let's automate the crappy parts, which are like, hey, everyone hates building lists. You normally have to put headphones on and blast some tunes just to bear the list building process.
Just to
Right.
pick
So
out a piece that you mentioned there is like actually observe the team. Like actually, I think a lot of the what can be automated question, well, like often companies sit and they sit with the leaders and they sit with the managers. And I think this has happened. Oh, we could try that. We could do this. Partly because they've seen someone say something on LinkedIn, or they've seen one of those images that we've all seen 100 times now on LinkedIn. These are the best tools, and there's like 20 different tools for different parts. I think a lot of that could be solved actually. Just sit behind your SDR for a couple of hours. Just say, crack on. I'm just going to make some notes and like look at how long did it actually take them to find a new contact, add it to a list, make the call, put the notes in. Then sit with your AEs. How long does it take them after a call to do ABC? And then you just have your shopping list, and then you can start to take that and say, can this be automated? Can this be automated? Can this be automated?
yeah, perfect. Okay, brilliant discussion. So in summary then on mistake one, how to avoid mistake number one, I would say is take a breath, reflect, review, look, learn, understand what people are doing, find the places where automation can make sense, find the places where human interaction is still imperative, and then understand who does what, why, and when. It does remind me of one of my favorite quotes by Dwight Eisenhower: in preparing for battle, I found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So everything always changes, but if you haven't planned, if you don't have that, if you haven't gone through that planning process, then your chance of being successful are reduced significantly. Awesome stuff, guys. We're going to move on to mistake number two, which is confusing strategy with execution. So I guess a sort of a natural follow on from the previous point. So I guess when you, and let's call it out, GTM engineering is sort of being seen as a silver bullet by many. You guys are experts in this world and know it isn't, but I guess there's a challenge that companies say, right, let's get this in, and then you expect them to sort the sales strategy out. Is that a common situation?
I see it all the time with people are expecting to buy clay for a couple $100 a month or $800 a month on their top tier package, and expecting the clay team on the other side to sort out their entire sales strategy, right? And they sometimes do like some setup sessions and things like that, but it's never going to be as robust as, getting someone in to really set you up. And I think the I think where I see people fall down is, again, it's easy to say like, hey, I've done the thing by purchasing the tool, but the moment you purchase like a tool like Clay, that's when the work begins, not when it ends.
Right.
It's purchasing a cognizant
Mm.
where, hey, I click a button and I get data. It's far more complex than that. It's like purchasing a HubSpot or, something like that, right? And so I think where people go wrong is they expect one Clay to solve their problems in terms of like, oh, they've got templates, they've got AI in the tool, it'll figure itself out. Two, when that doesn't work, they're like, oh, someone in the team's got to figure this out. And so they give it to normally, and like this is me being like super open now, is normally they give it to their most like mid-tier performer because they're semi-dispensable. So they're like, ah, you're not really hitting target, so go be useful in GTM engineering. And so that's always a red flag if if you're being told to look into GTM engineering as like a salesperson.
Right. It's
Like,
the
yeah,
moment to get your CV out and start updating it. Yeah.
yeah, because that's what happens, right? And it's a totally different skill set. And then third, they go to an agency, and then you get into agency land, which is basically every 16-year-old can say that they're a Clay agency owner at the moment because there's no barrier to entry. And then there's also the challenge of like, okay, well, how do I select an agency? Do I then go for someone who's going to set me up and be in and out, which is what I would recommend, versus, hey, am I going to get an agency on retainer and basically pay them, 5, 10K a month as a GTM engineering headcount? How do people go about that? Because the best GTM engineers own agencies, and unfortunately,
Right.
that's what's happening at the moment. There's like I think 6 people, like genuinely 6 people right now that work in businesses that are solid like GTM engineers, like wow factor levels, and they work at some serious businesses as well, and so their salary reflects that. So not every SaaS business today in the market can afford that level of talent right now,
Mm.
or knows even how to hire for it.
And James, you spend a lot of time advising clients in this world. So
Mhm.
do our biggest mistake here is confusing strategy with execution. So
Yeah.
do people get stuck in that sort of strategy stage, or do they jump straight into execution? What tends to happen?
Yeah, I think most people probably jump straight into the execution side, especially when we're talking about Clay. We've I think we've alluded to it several times already. It's like they buy a Clay license, they give it to someone in the team, say, "Can you work this out?" Or it's going to solve stuff. And I sympathise with sort of leadership who feel they kind of feel that pressure from above. Often it's the board, often it's investors saying, "What are we doing with AI? What are we
Yeah.
automating? What have you done with this? How can we get more AI in? Have you heard of Clay?" The number of people that come to me with no, they've got a data connected issue, so go through sort of phone infrastructure, we go through data and stuff like that. At the point in the conversation, they go, "What about Clay?" It's not gonna. It's a completely different area. But there's so much pressure from the board and investors that what are you doing with AI? How much automation can we get in? Have you looked at Clay? What about go-to-market engineering? That people jump the gun to just get some of that pressure off them, so that they can turn around and say, "Yep, we're doing this, we're doing that," and it becomes like a tick box, and they just start. They just need it. They just, so long as they can find something for it to help with or start doing, they forget like the whole wider strategy, and they might solve like a few immediate issues and basically find a few quick wins, like some more personalized messaging goes out. They find a bit of TAM they'd never noticed before that's actually a good fit. That only solves the problem for maybe a quarter, maybe a couple of quarters, and really they're kicking it down the road. um, and they think, yeah, picking a tool like that, they think that's a strategy, and that strategy is actually like the whole picture of your revenue org and how it all works together, who you're going to target, how reps are going to operate, and how that's going to like help you over a 2, 3, 5 year period.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here, guys, thinking this webinar should be sponsored by Clay. It isn't, and maybe to just sort of put water on that flame. We seem to when we talk GTM engineering, as I mentioned, very clever marketing. They've created a category, but we seem to automatically talk about Clay. But what else is out there?
Yeah.
What does it mean? and I'm trying to think strategy execution, but GTM engineering, in my view, doesn't just mean using Clay, right?
No, 100%, it shouldn't. And yeah, we demonstrated that there ourselves, like we've referred to it so many times already, right?
Yeah.
But I think like good go-to-market engineering, they should have an awareness of a multitude, like a multiple tools and categories. And the good go-to-market engineer, you might ask them you might jump to sort of execution and ask them to solve this, but the good ones will pause and say, well, what's like the wider picture? What is the strategy? Can you let me go and explore which tools we should use? Because I say this to a lot of customers when they bring up Clay. I say, well, there's actually someone who's already built a tool that solves the thing you're trying to solve. You can just get that out of the box, and it's really easy and it's really simple and it's going to do the job and it's going to cost you less. So a good go-to-market engineer should train and understand lots of different tools and be able to map out between 3 or 4 different tools. Okay, this is going to solve everything we need. This is going to be the workflow. And then they can go to somebody like Stakki, say, this is probably the best couple of options for that. This is the best couple of options for that.
Yeah, and to Abbas, to your point earlier, I guess GTM engineering is not about getting your mediocre sales head to build some new lists using technology. You know, it's fundamentally sort of taking that piece of work and that strategic requirement of going after the right people, ideally at the right time, taking that away from sales, but empowering sales to then have the conversation. So it is a totally different skill set, as you say.
Yeah, and also like GTM engineering means so many different things to so many different companies because what I'll give you an example. I have a client who like one of my most successful clients is a VC and we do outreach on their behalf. And what we've done is and they reach out to YouTubers, right? So we've got a tool that gives us a database and we just email them. And the GTM engineering on their behalf, it doesn't even touch Clay. What we do is we clean it up using like never bounce, which validates the emails. We use our subtle plug, but we use our emails from InboxKit, and then we send them using SendKit. And so and we know that that gives the best deliverability, and every single partner in that firm needs a Slack notification when a positive response comes in, and they can reply directly out of Slack, right? Like what is the because we've sat there and we've said, hey, what takes these guys the longest? Well, they're like, oh, I've got to log into every single email that we send out of, and then we've got to do this, and we got so GTM engineering for them is about ease and is about like the infrastructure side of things versus tiering TAM and doing all this other stuff because actually they have such a simplified use case that they can go after everyone who fits, those broad categories in those lists. There's no like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 for them. They want to go after everyone who they can deploy capital into. So that's where I would suggest like, hey, take a step back and figure out, hey, one, do you need Clay? Two, like I think most SaaS businesses would benefit from some more complex list building. So finding their own triggers, building out the data set, that is a given, I think, for most B2B businesses. But to James's point as well, is like, hey, sit down and I think this goes back to what we said earlier, which is like sit down, view your reps, see what they're doing day to day, and the answers will come from that, and you'll then know like, hey, okay, Abbas is spending 3 hours a day cleaning his list on LinkedIn to find out that James is already calling these people. Okay, so it's a connection issue now. So Clay might be the resource to double check, hey, whether this lead has been contacted or not. Or hey, none of the cold emails that we're sending from SalesLoft are landing, or responding to, okay, it's an infrastructure issue now. Okay, because these guys are just putting people in sequences because they're told to and they have high activity targets, but actually it's only cold calling that's working. So either we fix cold email or we double down on cold calling. Which one is it? So the answers always come from viewing what the team are doing.
Yeah. So reflecting on biggest mistake number two, sort of obvious, but think before you do. Don't just jump in with both feet. And I mean, it's sort of always amazing to me is that for some reason in the world of work, we stop thinking we just do what we've always done. And I think what I'm learning from you guys today is that it's a different skill set. It's a very different role to the sales individual, but it's really deeply integrated, because as long as you're all going in the same direction, and that comes back to that thing of let's get the strategy right before we then execute. And in order to execute, we might need different tools than you think you need, or we might need different tools than the board tell us we're going to need, because they've heard the buzz and they all need it to be AI, whatever. But actually it might be as simple as a connectivity thing or an infrastructure thing or whatever it might be. So yeah, so look, some really, really good points there, guys. So thank you. Mistake number 3 was we decided was getting ownership, accountability, and incentives wrong. So perhaps I see this point 3 as sort of drawing together the first two to some degree as well. Perhaps first question is, who do you typically see the GTM engineer or engineers report to?
So it differs from every organization, and this is what I found funny over the past couple of years. So we started Playbook Agency right at the start of when Clay was becoming to coin the term GTM engineering. We didn't even know that it was going to be as big as it was, right? Like we were just cleaning lists from it. Now, what we've noticed is it changes from company to company. Sometimes marketing own it, sometimes sales own it. We're seeing RevOps own it more and more now, and it's becoming, especially where I'm seeing RevOps own it more and more is the US based businesses. I think
Right.
it's become like a bit more of a directive there, versus in Europe, it seems like it's a bit of a whoever wants to take it,
Somewhere
hot
somewhere
potato.
between marketing and sales
Yeah.
and operations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it depends who needs it as well, right? So, for example, if marketing are really doing like a lot of demand gen activity, then Clay sits within their scope, versus if the sales team are really struggling on tiering leads and hitting the phones and having the amount of numbers that they require to, hit the phones well, then sometimes it starts off as a sales thing and then adapts. But one thing I have seen is whatever the point of entrance is not the point that it stays. Because what ends up happening is once people see this thing doing well, everyone jumps on it in like a really great way to see. But everyone's like, oh my God, sales is doing so well. Okay, I'm in marketing. Let's see what we can do with that. I'm in RevOps. Let's see what we can do with that. So it kind of spreads across the organization very quickly once you get those key wins. But I think it's important to get those key wins in the first 45 days. Otherwise, it just ends up as an abandoned project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so success breeds success, right? Like many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I think it should report to the RevOps team, but I agree with like Abbas. Like sometimes it'd be sales, sometimes it'd be marketing, depending on the size of teams. But I think it should report or sit under like the RevOps function. And the guys at Titan X, Evan, who I spoke to a few times recently, I think it was Evan anyway, but he said that like go-to-market engineering has become such a buzzword because RevOps has failed to address the top of funnel, which I thought
Right.
was like a really good point. RevOps, I think, got very good at and excited and involved in looking at sort of messaging and the sales processes and the deal stages and all these things and how the CRM is used and all like the list building, signal capture, triggers, outreach was still kind of like left with the SDRs and there wasn't as much support to refine all of that type of stuff. And that's where go to market engineering has then come into play. So they might often help that team a little bit more, but I think it should tie in and be like led by sort of the RevOps, who then can go and support an arm of the business that perhaps they neglected before.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So I guess my question is should GTM engineering be a subset of RevOps?
I think it is ultimately. I think
Is
it's
it
the
a
part that
subset?
they
Yeah.
didn't address before. I'm sure there's probably plenty of go-to-market engineers who'll be saying, no, we're our own thing, we're our own thing, we're our own thing. But
Yeah.
I think that the space and the org for that was created because RevOps maybe neglected that top of funnel.
Right. Or yeah, neglected, and it's just become more difficult. Abbas, do you agree with that? Any thoughts on that positioning?
Yeah, I think ultimately it should sit within RevOps, which is why the US teams that I've worked with, they're always RevOps first. I think the challenge sometimes with RevOps is they don't understand sometimes the full picture that the CRO or the marketing team are trying to fulfill. And traditionally, over the past few years, they've been very CRM focused. And
Yeah.
so whenever the RevOps teams come to us and say, hey, we've got a Clay project, I know 9 times out of 10 it's a CRM re-enrichment project
Mm-hmm.
versus something that's top of funnel, like James mentioned, right? Which is like, hey, well, how do we contact these guys? And I think that's where it's really a team effort and team alignment in terms of those three departments, sales, marketing, and RevOps. And sales and marketing guiding the strategy for RevOps to execute against. So I think strategy should always sit with sales and marketing, and RevOps should sit with execution, and they can ultimately own GTM engineering for sure. One of the things that I've found is RevOps tend to have their hands full with the CRM, and so sometimes they need either an extra headcount. The thing is, I've never been a RevOps person, so I don't actually know what their day-to-day is like. I don't know if it's actually like that hectic in the CRM or whether it's like, hey, like it's not as hectic, but like Clay looks like a headache to solve for. And I don't want to buy a course on Clay and blah, 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 and whatever, right? So I think there's sometimes always resistance to change, especially when these big tools come and kind of it can feel a bit threatening to RevOps actually, this GTM engineering piece, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're like, okay, well, am I doing a bad job because I don't know Clay? I think that's something that's going through people's minds as well at the moment.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it comes back to my point, really, I think, of around that sort of North Star focus, because classically in organizations, everyone gets fixated on their piece of the pie, whereas actually, if you look up and you're all heading for the same goal, then RevOps would be covering those bases. But and I think you're absolutely spot on, Abbas, in terms of the complexity and time sink of CRM. I mean, I don't know a customer across the almost 15 years of Durham Lane that has got a CRM that's in a good shape, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, it's just sort of a land of chaos. So that's definitely a challenge for organizations, and I can see therefore why things get taken out and taken into different asides. Look, that's been an amazing discussion, guys. I think we're just about at time, so I really want to thank you for your sharing your wisdom and best practice and thoughts on this really interesting area. We looked at the three biggest mistakes as we've diagnosed: hiring a GTM engineer before understanding your sales challenge or your sales challenges, confusing strategy with execution, and then getting ownership, accountability, and incentives wrong. And actually, what's been really interesting is those three have all weaved together really nicely. And hopefully, for those of you that have listened to us go on about this subject for the last 30 or so minutes, hopefully you've got some clarity and insight on. I guess firstly, whether you actually need a GTM engineer and what that is, what problem the role needs to solve. So again, let's do some thinking before we take action. How to avoid some of the common and expensive, costly mistakes that we've shared with you. And then finally, how GTM engineering fits alongside SDR teams, marketing teams, into RevOps, maybe we should say. I think we agreed on that. And then also, actually, where do you go for help? So these guys are experts in their field. Go to help to maybe think about the strategy element, but then, Abbas, to your point, execute within your business and pick the right people to take that ownership. Abbas, James, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you. Thanks to all of our listeners for being with us, and we'll see you next time on the next Durham Lane webinar.